let's firstly explain. So what do you need to explain if you're giving a talk on this and you want to explain the first point? What sort of things did you decide you need to explain? Come on, you all spent a lot of time talking just then in your groups. We're going to hear what you talked about. Sorry, say that again. Okay. Everyone listen to each other, please. The definition of, what is the word in your Bibles? Unwholesome. Corrupting. See, different versions have different words. It's actually useful. You're comparing when you're comparing a talk. Compare them. If you don't speak Greek or read Greek or Hebrew, look at the different versions because they help to clarify. So what does that mean? What's unwholesome talk? What's corrupting talk? Yeah, that's really important to explain. Because do you know what it means? You need to think about it and reflect on it. I've heard this, there's one of the versions I think uses unclean, but it might be the King James version, I forget, but I've heard this used to talk about don't swear, shouldn't use bad language, swearing. But actually, it means a whole lot more than that. So you need to define what it means. Unwholesome, unhealthy. I think it's actually just the opposite of the second half. So building up talk as opposed to tearing down an unhelpful talk. It's quite broad actually in meaning. But you need to say something and explain that. Okay, anything else that you talked about in terms of explaining?
Be careful with your words.
Be careful with your words, yeah. Yeah, so it's sort of clarifying what the point is, putting the point in your own terms, yeah, okay. Yeah, sometimes explanation is just rewording what's there in a way that's clearer or more easy to grab hold of. Okay, anything else for explanation? Such a short point, there's not a lot to say. Anything else? You guys at the back there? Yeah?
We want to share what we did, our group.
Okay.
So we started from the introduction. It reminds us the Sunday school song. Oh, be careful with the mouth, what we say. Honor up above. So we were reminded of that Sunday school song, and then we outlined it to first two commands. First is negative, and the other one is a positive command. We take the word do not. So it's a negative command. Do not talk unwholesome talk, or do not say bad joke or things that want to glorify God.
Yeah.
Okay, so we quoted some verses in Ephesians 4:26. Then our application from that is that it can destroy the unity of the church or group or relationship when you speak negative things. Okay, so it will bring barriers. Okay, then the second main point we have is positive command with the word
okay. I'll stop you there. I'll come to that in a minute. Okay, you're moving way past where we are, so you're. But that's good. Okay, thank you. So yeah, they even had the introduction as an example. Okay, we'll come more to that. But yeah, that was helpful. The other thing, some other verses. I think one of the things in giving Bible talks, I try not to jump around to lots of different passages. I think that's sometimes confusing. But it is also sometimes helpful to include one or two other passages that help clarify or confirm what you're saying, or maybe say much the same thing in a different way. So they mentioned James. James talks a lot about speech. So it is useful in explaining things to sometimes look at other passages too. Just don't do it too much. It's not useful, it's not helpful usually to be clicking backwards and forwards in the Bible, because people just get overwhelmed. But but that's one way to explain. Okay, any other things for explanation for this point about the unwholesome talk? Anyone have anything else to add?
So we should just like Sorry. Just like but we should be careful of what we post online. We should also be careful of what we say. We should think, sir, of what we say.
Okay, yeah, all right. Yeah, so I mean, that's the underlying point, isn't it? Think before you speak. Don't just let anything come out of your mouth because it just comes out. But first use your mind to think and then make a decision whether to say it or not. So could you say something about posting just then?
Posting online.
Posting online. So actually, I think that's not really explanation. Where might that fit into the
Application.
Yeah, I think it's probably more application because it's a practical thing. So in our day and age, it's not just what you verbally say, but the words you write down as well. So that's a really good application. Yeah, so, okay. I'm trying to break it up and look at this, but often when you do it in practice, you find it all mixes together, and that's fine. This is just a framework to help you look at the main points. Okay, so explanation, we've said a bit about that. Yeah, you've got to define what unwholesome words are. What's the main point of it? Thinking before you speak. Maybe looking at a couple of other passages that say things about speech. Lots of proverbs talk about wholesome words and unwholesome words. So explain. And depending on how long you're talking, you might explain a lot or you might explain a little bit. What about illustration? What illustration or examples did you come up with? Anything? Yeah?
Is it helpful to mention cyberbullying
Okay.
and effects
Election.
of it as an illustration?
Election.
Sorry?
Sorry. Election.
You are cyberbullying.
Yeah, so cyberbullying is an example of unwholesome talk. Again, I mean, we're obviously the 21st century, aren't we? We're talking about what we post on Facebook or whatever, but that's an example of unhelpful, unwholesome words. Yeah, that's a really good example. Because sometimes we just look at this on the surface and think, just be careful what you say, but actually it's a lot broader than that, isn't it? And maybe the areas where people are weak in is not verbally what they say, but that they're writing things too quickly without thinking. So that's a really good example. Cyberbullying happens and the application is before you post, think about the impact of what you're going to post. Okay? Any other illustrations?
Gossip.
Sorry?
Gossip.
Gossip. Okay. Yeah. So illustration here might be examples of unwholesome talk. Maybe you have a story or an experience or something that you heard or that you said that was unwholesome. But yeah, gossip or specific types of unwholesome talk. Anything else that you talked about then? Examples, illustrations.
Curses is where we
Okay.
using the Lord's name in vain.
Okay. Yeah. There's a whole lot of things we can think of. It's gossip, it's flattery, yeah, it's just angry words or cursing words. It's joking, in a hurtful way. I mean, there's a lot of different words. Again, Proverbs is great. If you ever want to do a study on speech, the book of Proverbs is just full of really good examples, positive and negative. And in fact, when I did preach on this passage a year or so ago, I used a number of Proverbs as the examples because they often describe very well. Did anyone else have other illustrations for this point?
There was this post I read online. So this teacher was trying to do an activity with her students. So there was this toothpaste. She asked them to squeeze it all out. So after the kids squeezed out all the toothpaste, she asked them if the kids would put it back in.
Okay.
So since, of course, it's really hard to put it back in, so obviously you couldn't do it anymore. So she explained that whatever words that come out of her mouth, we can't just take it back.
Okay.
Because you've already said something, and it already had an effect with the people that you holder.
Yeah, did everyone hear that? It's like squeezing toothpaste out of a tube, not putting it back in. I mean, that's great because it's actually a hands-on activity too. I mean, whether the kids do it or whether you show them doing it, I mean, that's a really, really good example with an illustration. Yeah. Okay. So here, so we explain things, we think of a way to illustrate it, and then application. So we've had one application already about, thinking about what you post online. What other applications did you come up with then in your discussion? Anything else? Practical ways of responding to this first point of the unwholesome words.
I guess what you already said, think before you speak. Doesn't apply to all.
I guess it's an application. What about other groups? Did you talk about application?
Perhaps put back your impulse to the act when you're angry or annoyed.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's good. In this area, illustration and application are a little hard to separate because of the nature of it. What you're illustrating is practical ways of speaking unwholesomely. So they sort of mix together here. But again, just for the sake of helping this exercise, you're trying to pull them apart a bit. Okay, nothing else? Did people then look at the second point, the positive one as well? Did you talk about that in your groups? Yeah? Okay, so let's look at that now. I'll go back to the group at the back. Do you guys, I stopped you when you were going to talk about point 2, positive. Do you want to say what you worked for that? Sorry, where I stopped you. You were going to say something about the positive side.
Okay. Our second part of the outline is positive command.
Yep.
So we took notice of the word but only. So our subtopic is being kind and being helpful. So how to speak in grace, to speak in love. Okay, so that's just part of verse 15. Okay, so that's what the other running candidates, Grace Poe said to the other candidates as well. We speak in truth.
Okay.
So in the UK.
Yep.
So our application here is to show Christ-like character within how we speak the truth and love by grace, because we took the synonym of grace as godly, pleasant. So let us be sensitive and extra careful to every words every words, and then we encourage them to edify.
Okay, all right, good, thanks. So one of the things I just mentioned there, they said they focused on but only. I mean, sometimes there are particular phrases or words that in your explanation you want to emphasize just to bring it out. You might think but only, that's just sort of the connecting word. But that's important, isn't it? Only. It's not just don't say bad words, only say positively good words. So what this is saying is, it's not just, you can say trivial words that don't mean anything, it's only say the words that actually have a positive impact, and the but only brings that out. Only say the words that build up. So in your explanation you can emphasize certain parts, certain phrases or certain verses to bring out a specific point that you think is important. Okay, what about other groups? So what did you say in terms of this point? What do you need to explain if you're giving a talk on it? What else might you need to explain? Only what is helpful to building others up according to their needs. You just need to read that and people automatically understand. What explanation might they need to really understand what's being said?
In our version, the ESV, it says, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion. So it's okay to say good words, but of course you have to consider the occasion. I think how we view it is as how the occasion, for example, speaking, and we could give you good words. For example, you look good today, which it doesn't really connect to the message. So instead, you could just say, your message was good. You were really inspired by your message. I think something like that.
Yeah. So that's another aspect of it you can emphasise according to the occasion, or here in the NIV it says that it may benefit those who listen. Because different people need to hear different words. It's not like these words are always good and these words are always bad. Sometimes you need kind and gentle words, sometimes you need rebuking, correcting words. So according to the circumstances and the needs of the person. So that's something you can bring out too in the explanation. Anything else? The reason I keep asking again and again is because there's always more. Often we're happy with one answer, but when we dig into the scriptures, the more we ask, the more we look, the more we can find. You could do a 5-minute talk on this verse, on this verse, and give a good, short talk. But you can also do a 40-minute sermon because there's so much in there. And the more we spend time looking and digging, the more we can get out, and the more depth of understanding. So that's why I keep pushing you to do that. Not because your answer's bad, but just to have that habit of digging into the Bible. But let's move on then. This second section, what about illustrations? Does anyone have some illustrations for the positive side of things? Anyone? Yeah, at the back.
We can like use everyday things.
Yeah.
Like you don't use a hammer to beat. Like proper, we use tools properly at the proper occasion. So it's like our mouth. We use our mouth to say the right word at the right place. Just like using the tools, like we use the spoon and the fork to eat, and not to use other tools
Yeah.
to eat.
Okay, that's good. And that relates to what this group said about the appropriate occasion. What was the ESV? How did it say?
It says that only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion.
As fits the occasion, yeah. So the right tools for the right occasion. And again, that relates to what I was saying. Some people only have one sort of type of words. They're always kind and caring, always. Sometimes you need to be a bit tougher in what you say. Other people have the opposite problem. They're always really abrupt and pushy. There's times to do that, but there's times to back off and be gentle. The right tools for the right occasion. That's a good illustration of that point. Okay. Any other illustrations? Okay. If not, what about application? Anything specific for application? Again, it's fairly obvious on one level, but anything you want to share from your group discussion on the application from the positive side of it? Any examples or things that you can encourage people to actually concretely respond with? No? Didn't get that far? Okay, that's fine. So again here though, just looking at it, thinking about positive application, what is helpful for building up? It goes back to the thinking about it and reflecting on the needs of other people. You're encouraging people to think about, well, why do you open your mouth and speak? Who are you seeking to benefit when you speak? Is it yourself or is it other people? You're bringing that home to, very concretely getting people to reflect on their own responses. Yeah, you going to say something?
Looking at the passage in the context of how it was said, when Paul said it, and the passage before that and after actually illustrates what a Christian looks like.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I saw in the passage that benefits not just the other person is also himself. He also builds up. What I see is reflecting on being a new Christian and the passage that precedes that tells you to be an imitator of God.
Yeah.
And I think there's another passage that Paul, I forgot which one, but the one that said, or edify or consider others better than yourself,
Yeah.
shows Paul was trying to point out that as Christians, we should never be self-centered people, but other people-centered. And when you're building other people up, and when you're saying good things about other people, and people hear it, it also benefits you as a personally because you mature as a Christian by considering others better than yourself. It's not an unselfish thing that we start producing in our lives. It's not unselfish.
Yeah, good. Okay, thank you. We're going to move on then, because we don't have a lot more time, and I want to do the last part of this. So we've looked at the passage and the three things: explain, illustrate, apply. This exercise, by the way, of getting together and talking, if you're learning how to give Bible talks, I think this is a great thing to do with your people in your church. I know some churches that even when they're training people to preach on Sunday, if they have young people with potential, that they form a team that works together to work out a structure and think of these things. Because when you're learning, you learn a lot from other people. You think, oh, I've never thought of that example or that illustration, or how to apply it there. So I want to really encourage you. One way of improving in these skills is getting together with others and just working through this process of structure, explain, illustrate, apply. But the last thing we look at is how do we start and how do we finish? Because these are important things. One thing Matt's already told us how to start, we sing a song. So you sing together, be careful little mouths or be careful little or whatever. That's one way you can do it.
Excuse please.
But I want you now, just again, you've got only about 5 minutes or so, but in your groups, turn to each other and think, how can you start this and how can you finish it? Okay? If you're giving this little talk, just a short talk on this verse, we've talked about some of the things you could say. But when you stand up and you open your mouth, what's the first thing you want to say? It might be just an introduction of a couple of sentences, or it might be a little example. Okay? I want you to do that, and if you've got time, then also talk about how would you just wrap it up. Okay, go and do that now in your groups of 4. How would you start? And how might you conclude? Okay, just brainstorm these 2 questions.